The new NIH Data Management and Sharing Policy will go into effect January 2023. This tutorial will cover information about the policy that anyone receiving or applying for NIH grant funding in Woods Hole needs to know. What is the new Data Management and Sharing Policy? From the NIH statement on their Policy for Data Management and Sharing Notice, the National Institutes of Health is issuing this final NIH policy for data management and sharing to promote the management and sharing of scientific data generated from NIH-funded or conducted research. This policy establishes the requirements of submission of data management and sharing plans in compliance with NIH Institute Center or Office-approved plans. It also emphasizes the importance of good data management practices and establishes the expectation for maximizing the appropriate sharing of scientific data generated from NIH-funded or conducted research with justified limitations or exceptions. This policy applies to research funded or conducted by the NIH that results in the generation of scientific data. There's a lot of information to unpack here, and this tutorial will cover the basics of the new NIH DMS policy and how it will impact you. In this tutorial, we will cover the who's, what's, when's, why's, and how's of the new policy, the elements you must include in your data management and sharing, or DMS plan, and resources for writing a DMS plan. Who does the new policy impact? The new NIH DMS policy impacts anyone conducting NIH-supported research generating scientific data. Previously, DMS plans were only required for grants related to certain institutes, centers, or offices, or for grants amounting to $500,000 or more. The new policy applies to grants from all ICOs and of all sizes. The new NIH DMS policy applies to all research funded, in part or in whole, by NIH funds that generate scientific data, including extramural grants, contracts, intramural research projects, and all other NIH funding mechanisms. This is not limited to specific types of NIH or ICO funding. But what does the NIH mean by scientific data? What aspects of your research will be impacted? Let's explore this some more. What does the NIH mean by scientific data? In the specific context of the NIH DMS policy, scientific data includes data of sufficient quality to validate and replicate research findings, data resulting from your study, even if that data does not end up supporting any publications, and any null findings. What is not included? In the specific context of the NIH DMS policy, scientific data does not include, and therefore you do not need to share, the following: lab notebooks, any preliminary analyses, case report forms, any physical objects such as lab specimens, any plans you may have for future research, and any communications that you have had with colleagues about your research. Knowing what data you do and do not need to plan for managing and sharing is essential to know as you begin to draft your DMS plan. What does the new policy require? We will go into more detail on what the elements of your DMS plan should be later in this tutorial, but in short, your DMS plan should detail how your scientific data and metadata will be managed and shared, and identify any potential limitations or restrictions on sharing. For example, information that may violate the privacy of human subjects or information that may be personally identifiable. While it is possible to revise or adjust your DMS plan after submitting your grant application, the management piece of the policy requires you to comply with your DMS plan throughout the course of your project as approved by the NIH ICO. When does the new DMS policy go into effect? The new NIH DMS policy applies to any grant application submitted on or after January 25th, 2023. Grant applications submitted prior to January 25th are not subject to the new policy, though please refer to any ICO-specific DMS policies that are already in place. This new policy will replace the 2003 data sharing policy that currently applies to all NIH grants. The new NIH DMS policy puts additional responsibilities and burdens on researchers receiving funding from the NIH. So why is data management and sharing important, and why is the NIH updating their current DMS policy now? In the words of Lisa Federer of the National Library of Medicine, data sharing is essential to the more rapid translation of research results into knowledge, products, and procedures to improve human health. This vision is at the core of the new policy, but the new policy also seeks to instill good research data management practices and equitable and accessible sharing of NIH-funded data for the purposes of advancing rigorous and reproducible research by allowing for the validation of results, promoting equitable access to research, and providing citation and collaboration opportunities for researchers. It also promotes public trust in scientific research by demonstrating transparency and accountability, good stewardship of taxpayer funds, and maximizing the contributions of research participants. How does this new DMS policy relate to previous ones? You may already be familiar with other DMS policies the NIH and some of the Institute centers and offices already have in place. So what's different now? As mentioned earlier, the new policy replaces the 2003 NIH data sharing policy. The new DMS policy will not override or replace policies that specific ICOs may already have in place, but rather it incorporates those policies. The new policy represents the minimum requirement for all NIH and ICO grants. Individual ICOs may provide more specific guidance. For example, instead of writing a separate genomic DMS plan, you will now write an NIH DMS plan that includes the requirements for the genomic DMS plan. A few examples of ICOs with DMS policies already in place include the National Cancer Institute, the National Human Genome Research Institute, the National Institute on Aging, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the Data Sharing Policy for Autism Data, and more. For a complete list of existing NIH data sharing policies, please visit the URL on this slide. It is essential to consider your DMS plan across all phases of your NIH grant-funded research project. An important change from the old policy to the new is that DMS plans must now be included with your initial grant submission. Previously, a DMS plan was only required after approval. Your initial DMS plan should only be 1 to 2 pages in length. During the grant assessment stage, you may receive feedback on your proposed DMS plan prior to or after acceptance of your proposal, but your DMS plan will not affect the proposal score. Revisions can be made throughout the project. Just be sure to inform your program officer. Your approved DMS plan will be incorporated into the final terms and conditions of your NIH-funded grant. Your project will be monitored at regular intervals in your Research Performance Progress Reports, or RPPRs, to be sure you are complying with your DMS plan. And your adherence to your approved DMS plan may factor into future funding decisions. It is necessary and essential to plan for the management and eventual sharing of your research data throughout all phases of your research project. For all stages of research, DMS plans must maximize data sharing with justifiable limitations, provide detail for how all data should be managed, including data not being shared, outline a plan for protection of privacy, rights, and confidentiality, and abide by existing federal, tribal, state, and local laws and regulations. So what do you need to include in your data management and sharing plan for NIH-funded grants? There are 6 core elements required of your DMS plan: the data description, tools, software, and code used, data standards, plans for preservation, access, and timelines, details on access, distribution, and reuse considerations, and plans for oversight of data management. Let's talk about each of these in a little more detail. The data description. In this section, you will summarize the scientific data necessary to validate your findings. You should list or create a table to describe the datasets that will be created or used as part of your study, including the data type, format, size, and number of files. Estimates are acceptable as necessary. Which datasets will be shared, the level of aggregation, de-identification, or processing and cleaning that will be done prior to sharing, and the source of any secondary data or previously collected data reused in this project. Tools, software, and code. In this section of your DMS plan, you must identify the tools, software, and/or the code necessary to access or manipulate your data. This section of your plan should include the following elements: information about any specialized software or tools needed to access or manipulate your data, the availability of those tools to other researchers. Are they open source tools that are freely available, or are they proprietary tools requiring purchase or subscription? And what is the expected lifespan of those tools? How long will they be available for? Standards. You should also include a section in your DMS plan that covers the standards that will be used for sharing the data and metadata associated with your research. Standards can include, but aren't limited to, the following: data formats, metadata schema used, data dictionaries used, persistent identifiers, definitions, and consensus standards. You will want to consider whether there are discipline-specific schemas and standards you should adhere to, or if common standards are appropriate. If you're not sure what's right for your research projects, some of the resources listed at the end of this tutorial can help you out. Preservation, access, and timelines. This section of your DMS plan should provide plans and timelines for sharing and preserving your data for long-term usability. Information to include in this section is the name and location of the repository you plan to use, details on how your data will be findable, and information on when you plan to share your data. For additional information on choosing an appropriate repository for your research data, the librarians at the MBL Hui Library are happy to help. Additional considerations for this element of your DMS plan include when to share your data and how long to preserve it for. According to the NIH policy, data should be shared no later than the time of publication or the end of the award period. Determining how long your data should be preserved for is less clear-cut, and you should take the following into consideration when making those decisions. What are the relevant requirements and expectations for your discipline? For the type of data you've produced? Does the journal you've published your research in have any policies on data preservation? Or does the repository where you are depositing your data have any policies on retention and preservation? Access, distribution, and reuse considerations. Do you really have to share all of your data? No. The NIH recognizes several reasons why you would or should not share your data. This section of your DMS plan is the place to include that necessary information. Important considerations that may affect the extent of data sharing you're able to do include legal factors associated with federal, tribal, state, or local regulations, policies, and laws, as well as ethical, privacy, and confidentiality protections and considerations. Oversight of data management. This last section of your DMS plan is a change from the previous policy and should detail your plan for oversight and ensuring your DMS plan is carried out. You should list the names and titles or roles of everyone who will be responsible for monitoring compliance with the DMS plan. Possible roles include who will be responsible for collecting data, analyzing the data, reviewing the data and/or results, sharing or publishing the data, owning the final data, and serving as a point of contact for the data after the project's completion. The NIH understands that members of your research team may change throughout the course of the project, so you will need to keep this portion of your plan up to date as personnel changes occur. These changes can be updated as part of your research performance progress reports. Lastly, you should be explicit in how often compliance with your DMS plan will be verified. The NIH does acknowledge there are additional costs associated with these new requirements, and they have outlined guidelines for allowable costs that may be covered in your grant proposal. Reasonable costs allowed in budget requests include costs associated with data curation and development of supporting documentation, preserving or sharing data through repositories, or local data management costs. It is important to note that these costs must be expended during the period of performance. Costs the NIH does not consider as allowable data sharing costs include infrastructure costs or those associated with routine conduct of research. Not sure how to estimate costs for your DMS plan? There are several resources available to help you out. Two excellent places to start are sharing.nih.gov. The NIH's site on scientific data sharing has several resources available to help you with estimating costs as well as additional clarification on allowable versus non-allowable costs. The National Academies for Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine have also curated resources that will help you determine DMS costs across the life cycle of your data, from primary research phases to costs associated with repository storage and long-term preservation. Let's talk about resources for writing your DMS plan. DMP Tool is a free service that lets you create data management plans for specific funding agencies, including the NIH. This tool has sample plans and templates available to help you complete and learn about the requirements for the new NIH DMS policy. You can access DMP Tool by going to dmptool.org and creating an account using your institutional credentials. If you have any questions about DMP Tool or need help navigating the tool, just contact a librarian. Our contact information will be available at the end of this tutorial. The NIH also provides help and support at sharing.nih.gov. This site includes a variety of resources to help with planning and budgeting, as previously discussed, sharing data and selecting repositories, understanding NIH policies, and finding which policies apply to you. The MBL Hui Library also has resources and help available to Woods Hole researchers. Expert librarians are ready to answer your DMS plan questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Samantha Porter or Audrey Mickle with questions. Reach the entire library team at library@mbl.edu or find help on your own on our website, mblhuilibrary.org/services/data management resources. Happy writing and hope to hear from you soon.